All right, we're live. How's it going? Um, so, real quick live today because I'm feeling disoriented because I have ear issues. Two eustachian tubes that are plugged, and then I had some wax taken out of my left ear. But I still feel rather disoriented, and it had me think about what a perfect topic to bring up today is. I'm feeling a little dizzy, a little disoriented, and we can often feel that way in the midst of our to dos, the unexpected, multiple sources of stress and uncertainty all hitting us at the same time. It can be dizzying, it can be overwhelming, disconcerting, and we become ungrounded, kind of floating. And I will even get into a state of mild discomfort, mild anxiety, that kind of thing, when I'm in the midst of like a confused state. And I can get triggered into a confused state rather easily. And I don't like that experience. That feeling of when you're just in the midst of fog, fuzz, and static, can't think clearly, and you feel disoriented. So, since I will kind of have the propensity to feel that quite easily, I've come up with several approaches to getting grounded, calm, and clear. Today, I'm going to talk about one of them, and I call it finding your still point. So, a still point is anything that's, well, not moving. And it can be a variety of different sources. So, if I am sitting in a chair, if I keep my focus while I'm doing my doing, right? Let's say I'm on the phone or on the computer doing my stuff. If I can check in and just for even 3, 4, 5 seconds or more if you can, and maybe a few rounds of it, if you can just simply feel, be present to the awareness of the weight of your body, that's a still point. That's a non-changing thing. And if you can tune into that sensation enough, what that does, it like grounds an electronic circuit, so to speak. It completes the circuit. When you are grounded, literally and metaphorically, it is a foundation from which to come from. And so if I can focus into my still point for just long enough, then everything else will orient around it. It gives it like a foundation so that your mind and body can find the rhythm and flow and to get in sync. Because in general, we need to be in flow, in sync, having our rhythms coordinated. Think about your heart rate, how you breathe, the rhythm patterns and cycles of your digestion, and everything else in your body. Extend that notion to rhythms and patterns external to us that we entrain with. Entrain is to lock one rhythm or pattern into another. So it's rather profound, the impact that, like, the sun has on our ability to sync up with the time of day and the season. So when you look up at the sky and you look at the sun, the waves coming in has a whole bunch of information, including the time of day and the season and a whole bunch more. And so there's a master clock in the brain that will basically take a look at the information coming in from the light, and it will attempt to entrain or get in sync with that information. So it's very important in terms of just absolutely fundamental to our sleep patterns and whatnot, the chemicals like serotonin and melatonin being given off, and other chemical processes throughout the body are all a function of, think of it like an orchestra. And all these different parts are happening at the same time in coordination with each other. If they're not, it sounds like a cacophony. There's a lack of coordination. And then perceived chaos. So if I'm doing my day, so you get that? So it's, finding patterns and rhythms is fundamental to not only our health, how we live our day, but also how clearly we can think in our state of mind. So as I have this plugged eustachian tube and things are disoriented, my brain starts to freak out because, again, like I said earlier, it does not like to feel disoriented. You know what I mean? that fuzz and static in your head when you're first waking up, that kind of feeling. So I've spent a lot of my life feeling that way perpetually, namely because of cognitive issues, and I come to find out health issues at the same time, both synergistically fed into it. And plus, maybe I'm just a little out there, spacey, who knows? But all kidding aside, so again, think in terms of patterns, rhythms, and cycles, and that when we can synchronize, good things happen. So whether it be the information from the light waves from the sun to help entrain and coordinate the different chemical processes through our body, give us our sleep patterns and whatnot. But it's also getting in line and in sync with other people, like in having a conversation. There's a rhythm and flow to that. And if, let's say, I'm distracted and my mind is elsewhere, well, then it makes it hard to get into sync. So that's the general idea here, is getting in sync, good. Out of sync, not good. And it makes us get scattered in terms of thinking, and it also will ruin the flow and productivity to our day. And when out of sync or rhythm with people, there's a lack of connection as a result. So this is where the still point comes in. The mind, the body, and life itself will benefit from having some kind of foundation to stand on. It makes it easier for it to find the rhythm. Does that make sense? So you you focus on the awareness of something that's not moving. So right now, if you're sitting in a chair, just for a second, close your eyes and become aware of the weight of your body on the chair. Or if you're standing, feel the floor pushing up. So if your mind tunes into it, the mind is like a radio. It's a transceiver. It transmits and receives waves. And so you can think of it like tuning into stations, if you will. So that's what awareness is. So as I ask you to close your eyes and just put the awareness on the weight of your body in the chair or floor or whatever pushing up, by tuning into that awareness, it gives us a still point. This can be used even in sports when I'm skiing. Let's say I'm doing moguls or I'm skiing in between the trees. My mind and body are making 1,000,001 decisions in the moment. And that can get frenetic. That can get a little crazy. And if you get out of rhythm, you're going to hit a tree. So what I do is, as I'm going down the hill and my body and mind are making all these decisions around the trees, what I'm doing is I'm focusing on the part of my body that's not doing much at all, my center of gravity. And by focusing on my center of gravity, that part that's doing nothing, it gives, again, my mind and body a foundation to then get in sync with the other rhythms. Does that kind of make sense? So, other still points that you can use. If you have any thoughts or questions, please comment. I'd love to have you say hi. So another example of a still point. Now, a still point doesn't have to actually be still. It can actually be a repetitive pattern. That ends up being perceived as a still point. For example, your breathing. So that's why focusing on our breath can be such a beautiful thing. And, when we're in the middle of confusion, anxiety, overwhelm, frustration throughout the day, and things are a little out of sync, then it's hard to remember, oh, that's right, focus on my breath for a little bit. But let's say you're driving your car. Here's another still point. If you're driving your car and you're getting frustrated with the traffic or whatever, or you're kind of overwhelmed with some issues that you're having or whatever, put your awareness on, again, the weight of your body on the seat. Now, let's say you're driving down the road 30 miles per hour. Relative to the road, you're going 30 miles per hour. But if you think about it, relative to your seat, you're going 0 miles per hour. So in race car driving, this also applies, that if you can find a grounding of awareness and focus, then you can better respond to the changing conditions that you're feeling through the fingertips, holding onto the steering wheel. So finding your still point, there are many ways of doing it. It's very helpful, and it only takes a few seconds to do. And it's very calming and grounding. And it's not a metaphorical thing. It's just like an electronic circuit. You need a positive voltage source, whatever. You also need the grounding. Without the grounding, things flounder and really nothing else happens. So especially these days when waves of uncertainty, if you will, are coming at us individually and collectively, it's absolutely critical for me personally to find my still point within all the cacophony of all that's going on. So mentally, I can find a still point when it comes to that stuff is, and this is a very, very good practice for me to do. So I'm not going to talk about it, but I'm going to just say in the realm of politics and other topics that are inflammatory, and there's a lot of controversy and a lot of conflict, right? My still point with that, so that I can remain sane within the insanity of all this stuff, it's not so easy, but it entails, well, one way of putting it is resist nothing. And so how I do that is I give myself permission to let people be who they are just for the moment. It's a really simple concept, but extremely powerful when, especially when you understand that, you know, when things are happening, the mind is judging it, and it's most likely going to push against. It's not going to like what's going on if there's bad stuff going on. And in the pushing against, the mind kind of freaks out. It has us feeling stress and frustration and other emotions. And I have found that as a game, and that's the essential thing here, and just for the moment, I tell my mind, it sounds a little silly, but try it, okay? Try it and tell me what happens. I will say, I choose to have, and this is not just an intellectual thing, this is like a proactive decision that I am making, again, just for the moment, just for me. Not because I can't change anything, but no, I proactively choose to have things be no other way than how they are. Or I choose to have that person be who they are being in this moment, just for this moment. It's not allowing, it's recognizing that current reality is such, and for right now, I'm going to choose it. Why? Because it is what's going on. Does it make sense? Now, not so easy to do, but again, that's why I say, you know, approach it like a game. That when you can remember to just like, okay, I find myself disoriented or I'm frustrated or pissed off at the person or frustrated in traffic, try to find that still point. So you do it mentally, like I just said, by, again, this has got to be a game. This is not a forcing thing. This is a choice and a decision you make just for a couple of seconds even. I choose to have it be just the way it is. It sucks, don't like it, but I'm not going to fight it. I'm not going to try and change it. I'm not going to try and solve it. I'm not going to try and get away from it. If you don't do any of those things, and just for, I can't emphasize enough, even just for 1 second, I choose. It's like, okay, it is what it is. That alone can be your still point. And then interesting things can happen. The flow can return almost instantaneously. You'll get a little sense of calm. Your chest might open up a little bit, and you might want to encourage it by taking a couple of deep breaths. And also paying attention to your rhythm. Just slow down a little bit with whatever you're doing in the moment. If you can just slow your tempo down just a tiny bit. Then combine it with, like if you're sitting in a chair right now, again, being aware of the weight of your body as it's pushing down against the chair, as it is pushing up at an equal and opposite force. Go into that awareness, that's your still point. Your mind likes still points. It gives it a place to anchor so it can feel secure. And then from there, it can look at things and more readily synchronize with those things. I hope this makes sense. I hope this is helpful. Please, whatever ideas I share, these are meant to be played with, not something to manhandle and try and force change, because that will sometimes do the exact opposite. So in the end, in every single Facebook Live I've ever done, every message I've ever shared, it really does, as far as I can tell, come down to the perception that's happening from your mind. How's it filtering it? How's it judging the moment? And if we can, just for a moment, observe and not change it. That's a paradoxical trick that I don't think many consider or are aware of. It's one of the top key, essential, crucial distinctions that make all the difference in the world, because there's something called paradox steeped in every facet of reality. And here's a perfect one. Sometimes the more we try to create a change, the bigger it becomes, and it can push back at us. It's like we turn this thing into this big thing, and it's like, I'm going to change this person or my life, or I'm going to change this habit, I'm going to get rid of this tomorrow, or whatever it happens to be. We want to make it as light, crystal clear, that's the power, but light, small, breathe, not in the midst of frustration and struggle trying to get to some other place than where you find yourself right now. Because as you try to do that, again, it's like the quicksand. If you find yourself in quicksand, the one thing you don't want to do is fight and struggle, because what happens? You start to sink. So be on the lookout for paradox, especially when it comes to things of the mind, and how the mind is taking a look at situations and judging it, perceiving it. So the first step is being aware of what it's giving you in the moment as you're observing it, hopefully from a place of curiosity and fascination. But then again, the trick is, for the moment, do not change it. You don't have to. And paradoxically, then it works in your favor. The more light and curiosity kind of driven your observing is, like a scientist or a child, like curious, like, hey, what is this? Interesting. Really important little piece right there. So play with the mind. Don't force it into compliance, wage war against it, force it into, we want to avoid that paradoxical stuff, because if we manhandle, eventually it tends to kick back at us, or it makes things harder than what they have to be. So find your still point whenever you think of it. There's many ways, and you come up with your own ways. And it doesn't have to be an absolute still point where nothing's moving. Any repetitive pattern, like your breathing, a repetitive cycle, will end up being a still point for your mind and body. And then, once you find the rhythm, get into sync, you can tell instantly. Look for it. Your thinking will go from clouded, frenetic, staticky, scattered, to a little calmer, clear. The quality of your thoughts, if you notice, will go up, and you can hear and act on them more readily as well. You also might find when things get in sync, things instantly get easier. And this happens in the micro moment and the macro, the big, meaning overall trajectory of your day or your life. It's infinitely easier when we're in rhythm with things. And the only way, so your body wants to get into rhythm and sync. Like I said, your life depends on it. When you get into the rhythm and pattern of the cycles of nature by looking up at the sun, and it entrains with the master clock in your brain, and it coordinates like a conductor of an orchestra, all the chemical changes in your body and your sleep patterns and everything. That is ultimate health, and it's not talked about very often. But if you think about it, rhythm, patterns, and cycles, the universe depends on it, the nature depends on it, right? Every animal, every insect, every flower, every tree. So it makes sense. It's not that big of a stretch to consider that every facet of your life, without exception, I'm going to say, is affected by rhythm, patterns, cycles. So bottom thing, if you remember nothing else today, when you get into rhythm, things flow. And life is a hell of a lot more fun and easier. So play with that. Remind yourself, every once in a while, give yourself the gift of, where's my still point? In the midst of the cacophony and overwhelm and whatever's going on in my day, where's my still point? Don't fight what is. Choose to have it just for the moment, just for a few seconds. I choose to have this person, situation, whatever, be no other way. Why? Because it is what it is right now. So I know that the less I fight and push against, I will automatically get into sync with it and work with those things a lot better. Notice what you notice. Have fun with all this stuff. Life is good. Enjoy the ride. See ya.